Welcome back to Metal Mondays with Maiden. This week we have 3 epic cassettes coming at you. We have Judas Priest, Point of Entry, Dio's Last in Line, and the Kiss Rock and Roll Over cassette. I know Kiss doesn't really fall into the heavy metal category, but for a lot of us, it was the start to our first venture into hard rock and then heavy metal, so it does deserve a place in the conversation. So first off, let's start off with Judas Priest. This Judas Priest record here, this is from Saudi Arabia. This is on the IMD label. These are very rare. They're very hard to find. And it features the European cover, which was designed by longtime Priest cover designer Roslav Szabo. And you can see this has paper labels. And again, look it up, IMD 7230. It is a Saudi Arabian release. And here's the back. So this has the European cover. And this version here is the North American cover, which features a large line of paper stretching out into the horizon. This artwork was designed by John Berg, longtime CBS cover designer. And a lot of people don't like this cover. They prefer this cover here. But this was the first to feature the 3D Judas Priest logo. This was the first album. So this album had some pretty good tracks like Heading Out to the Highway, Hot Rockin' in Desert Plains. It was the 7th album recorded by Judas Priest. It was released in February 27th, 1981. And it was recorded at Ibiza Studios in Spain in October to November of 1980. That album was the most commercial album that they had done, and this followed the British Steel record. One of my favorite albums is Point of Entry, and Desert Plains being one of my favorite songs. So this is a staple in any Judas Priest collection. And one last point to mention as well is the Ibiza Studios in Spain was one of the most state-of-the-art studios of the time in 1980. It featured a bunch of new equipment, and actually it gave this record a little bit more of a punchier sound than a British Steel. So that's Point of Entry. It's a great record. Check it out. Next up we have Dio's Last in Line from Ronnie James Dio. This was released in 1984. And it was recorded at Caribou Ranch in Colorado. So this is a white cover, white shell. And it was produced by Ronnie James Dio. And you might remember Ronnie James Dio from Elf and another band with Deep Purple guitar player Richie Blackmore called Rainbow. And this is listed in Hard Rock Magazine as number 382 of the most influential heavy metal records of all time. So the top 500 heavy metal records. This comes in at 382. So Dio was formed in 1982 with drummer Vinny Appice, bass player Jimmy Bain, and Jake E. Lee before he joined Ozzy Osbourne. But then was replaced a month later by Vivian Campbell. And that lineup went to do Holy Diver, which is the first record, and then Last in Line. Ronnie passed away of stomach cancer at 67. And may he rest in peace. He was a great lead singer. And again, he fronted Black Sabbath. He played with Heaven and Hell. He started Elf and then played with Rainbow. So some of the notable tracks here on this record are Evil Eyes, We Rock, I Speed at Night, One Night in the City, and of course the title, Last in Line. It was released on Warner Brothers in North America and Vertigo Records throughout the rest of the world. And last but not least, coming in is a Kiss heavyweight, Kiss Rock and Roll Over. As you can see, this isn't a coin version of Rock and Roll Over. This, here, let's focus, honey. This is an original 1976 Kiss Rock and Roll Over cassette. You can know it's an original or first printing because it has the Sunset Boulevard address for Casablanca, so 8255. And another cool feature is this actually has the original sticker still on the cassette shell. So if you look up that catalog number, you'll see that this is the first Kiss printing of Rock and Roll Over in the United States. So it's got the old gray shell, stamped with the number of the release. So this is the cassette, and this is again an early US printing. It's probably the first one because it does have the Sunset address and the sticker on the top. This is the Canadian version of this same record. As you can tell, it has a bit of a different cover. And the shell is different as well. This has a black shell. And it doesn't have paper labels. It's actually printed on and made in Canada. So let's talk about Rock and Roll Over for a minute. Rock and Roll Over was the 5th studio album from Kiss. It was recorded between September and October 1976 at the Star Theater in upstate New York. It was released on the Casablanca record label on November the 11th, 1976. It reached number 11 on Billboard's Top 200 and had 2 singles, Hard Luck Woman and Calling Dr. Love. The artwork was from an artist named Michael Durrett. And he's a world-renowned logo artist coming out of California. And actually, Kiss actually had him do the Sonic Boom record in 2009. So he came back and did another cover art for Kiss for Sonic Boom. And Anthrax did an homage to this cover for their live album called Kings Among Scotland. And you'll see a picture of it right here, which is kind of cool. Anthrax is a great record. We'll talk about them in another time. Anthrax has great records. But these tracks still stand up over all these years. This was an earlier return to the earlier Kiss sound, pre-Kiss Destroyer. Most of this material was written before Destroyer and during the Destroyer tour. So it wasn't as hard or as edgy as Kiss Destroyer was, and it was not produced by Bob Ezrin, as Kiss Destroyer was. And Heavy Metal Magazine Collector's Guide rates this as a 7 out of 10. So it is still an influential record in quote-unquote hard rock heavy metal. So that's all I got for this week. We got Judas Priest with both artworks here. We have Dio last in line. Rest in peace, Ronnie James Dio. And of course, Kiss Rock and Roll Over. With that said, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you in the comments, and we'll see you all next week.